You're listening to the AAF Analyzed podcast with your host, Derek Hyde and Garrett Lay.
Hello and welcome. You are listening to AAF Analyzed Week 6 Preview. As always, I'm Derek Hyde, and alongside me, Garrett Lay. Before we get started, do not forget, if you're listening on YouTube, to like and subscribe, if you're on SoundCloud, to like and give us a follow, and if you're on Apple Podcasts, to subscribe and leave us a review. We're also on like 10 other different sites, so make sure you like and follow on those sites as well. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at AAF Analyzed to keep up with the latest news and episode release announcements. It is the #1 source for everything AAF Analyzed.
And if you are worried about any sort of viewership numbers on the AAF, fear not, because CBS will now broadcast one of the conference championship games on Sunday, April 21st, in advance of the network's primetime broadcast of the inaugural Alliance Championship game on Saturday, April 27th, which is at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And then they also picked up another game, which is super cool, on Saturday, April 6th, which will be the Memphis Express against the San Antonio Commanders at the Alamo Dome. So that's really exciting. It's nice to see that CBS and not just CBS Sports is picking up on some extra AAF games.
Yeah, it's really cool, especially those games at San Antonio, because they have the highest attendance numbers in the Alliance, and they get loud, and it's cool to watch.
Yes, they do.
Sure, it'll be a very fun game to watch on CBS. But without further ado, that game is not this week, so we're going to move on to the games that are this week and start with our first game. Memphis taking on Salt Lake, March 16th at 4 p.m. This game will be the Bleacher Report Live game. We're back to BR Live.
Yeah, which we did find out you can actually watch these for free, which neither of us knew last week until we went ahead and actually clicked on it.
2 weeks ago.
And it turns out that you can watch the Bleacher Report Live games without actually having and subscribing to Bleacher Report Live. So if you thought you needed that subscription, you don't. You can still watch these for free, which is super cool. Or, of course, you can still stream them in that AAF RAW format that is available on their website.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the AAF RAW format personally,
No,
though.
it's kind of weird.
Definitely the Bleacher Report Live is personally the best way to go, in my opinion. And since it's free, I don't even think you need to make an account. So
No.
it's just go over to their site and you can pick it up. And this game between Memphis and Salt Lake is the game between the two worst records in the league. Both teams are coming in 1-4, but they do have something to play for, as both teams are only 2 games out of a playoff spot, and there's still 5 games remaining in the regular season. In Memphis's last 3 losses, they have only lost by a combined 9 points. And it's a similar story for Salt Lake, who's only lost their past 3 games by a combined 14 points. Both teams are so close to turning a corner. All they need to do is a ball to bounce their way, and suddenly they're in contention again.
That's absolutely true. Even though these teams both have the worst records in the AAF, I do not think this is going to be the worst game of the week by far.
No.
Both of these teams are looking for that second win. They're hungry for it. And my first key for Memphis to get it is, can they get their run game going? We said last week was Zach Stacy's time to shine once again, and we were right, but look out, because it's going to be tough sledding again for Stacy this week. They're going up against the #1 ranked run defense in the league, and that absolutely smothered the Fleet in Week 5. If Memphis can figure out how to crack the code in this run defense, I could see them having a really, really good game. But if they have to rely on their passing game, I doubt this game is going to go well for the Express. Mettenberger doesn't throw the ball that often. They really rely heavily on Zach Stacy and Beatty to get going on the ground, and this Stallions defense just doesn't allow that to happen.
Yeah, well, it's funny how you bring up Sherman Beatty in the Memphis run game, because breaking news out of Memphis, Sherman Beatty just got placed on IR on Thursday. Well. So the weight of Memphis's running game relies almost solely on Stacy's shoulders once again. He is one of the highest snap usages in the league, and it's just it's all him now again.
That's not good news for Memphis at all. It was nice for Stacey to be able to split the carries and get off the field sometimes, but he's literally going to have to be on the field the whole time because he's also an excellent pass catcher. He had that one big gain last week. So I wouldn't be surprised if Stacey's in there for almost all of their offensive snaps now. I've noticed in the AAF, these guys just go on IR like without any news of injury beforehand, it feels.
Just quietly, and they're placed on it, and it's a big surprise.
Like Brandon Oliver, when he got placed on IR, I hadn't heard anything about him being hurt. And then all of a sudden he was on IR and he's out for the rest of the season. And now it's all up to Joel Buonio.
Yeah, well, there's another Stallions running back that just got placed on IR. Speaking of that, Matt Asiata was also placed on IR around the same day that Sherman Beatty was. So now Joel Buonio is the only running back in the backfield for the Stallions.
Well, that's going to change things up, too. We're going to have two running backs who are going to be on the field pretty much the whole game every time their team is on offense. So I'd pay really close attention to how those running backs play because they might really determine how this game plays out here. This is weird, the IR stuff. I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah, someone you could look out for, though, Terrence McGee for the Express was gaining carries last week. He had 5 carries, 12 yards, and he had 22 receiving yards. So if you're looking for maybe a buy low running back, Terrence McGee, the Express, might be the way to go. I don't know who the backup for the Stallions would be. So.
I think it's that Terrell Newby guy
that
we talked
Newby
about
is
last
still
week. He did have a fumble last week, so I'm not sure how much they're going to want to give him the ball, but I'm sure they're going to have to, being down to pretty much just one running back. So I wouldn't also be surprised if Newby gets a couple carries. But the IR stuff is really messing with teams, particularly teams who are trying to get back into the playoff hunt.
Yeah.
But something other than the running backs here in this game, I think the Stallions' passing attack is going to be a big key. As long as Woodrum takes care of the ball, their passing game should be able to have a solid outing this week. Aaron Murray had 306 passing yards, and Atlanta had 3 receivers gain over 50 receiving yards last game against the Express. So Woodrum definitely has the chance to air it out. He just has to make sure to not throw those picks.
Yeah, if Josh Woodrum can play like he had in the second half of last week's game, he could maybe win one of these close games for the Stallions, but the Memphis pass defense isn't a particularly good one either. They only rank 6th best in the league, and they average passing yards against per game. So this should be a game that Woodrum can put up nice numbers as long as he doesn't start off as slow as he had last time.
Yeah, and with them having pretty much only one really good running back in that backfield, they're going to have to throw the ball a lot more than I thought before knowing about Oliver, and then the same thing goes for Memphis with Beatty. So pass attack on both sides is going to be important.
Yeah.
Another thing, this really weighs in with that pass attack, turnovers. The Stallions were atrocious at taking care of the ball last week, and if they want to win this game, they're going to have to turn over the ball way less than 5 times. You cannot win a football game turning the ball over 5 times. This is true in every league, no matter where you're playing. Memphis was able to force 4 fumbles last week, but only recovered 1, so the Stallions are going to have to emphasize ball security in practice before this game. And on the other side, the Express only turned the ball over twice last week, but the tip pick is what lost them their game last week against Atlanta. So don't turn the ball over in the red zone, and you're probably going to win this one.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, how I said that Memphis gets really lucky bounces in the turnover battle. So if you're going to give them 5 turnovers like the Stallions had last week, Memphis is just going to bury you, and it's not going to be a challenge.
Nope. All right, speaking more about the passing game here, though, the Memphis receivers. These guys have not been anything great yet. I've yet to see anything really special from a Memphis pass catcher besides their ability to block for the running backs, or in this case now running back. They have a chance to shine against a weaker Stallion secondary here. Memphis ranks dead last in terms of wide receiver production per game, getting only a little over 100 yards per game out of them. So they're going to need to break some big catches and find the end zone against this defense, who holds their identity in the fact that they can stuff the run, not stuffing the pass. So if there's going to be a game where these receivers break out, it's probably going to be this one, and Memphis is going to need it.
Yeah. Memphis also needs to work on correcting mistakes. I just read an article from the Memphis Team Reporter where Mike Singletary told him that self-inflicted wounds have hurt the team in close losses this season, as we talked about that interception from last week. And a combination of pre-snap penalties, turnovers on offense, and missing assignments on defense are some of the things that Singletary wants to correct before the trip to Salt Lake. And if they can fix these small things, I feel like Memphis could certainly put up a really close battle, if not win this thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. But some key players to watch during this close battle. First off, I have the Stallions' entire defensive line. The Express offensive line has been excellent at preventing sacks this year. Last week, they had their worst week, and they only gave up 3. They'd given up 1 in a couple previous games and 2 once before that. But their run blocking has been weaker, as they are in the bottom 3 in running back yards generated per game. Look for those big interior linemen for the Stallions like Mike Purcell and Dial Versilgia to wreak some havoc in the backfield. And as usual, I wouldn't be surprised if Carter Schultz ends up finding the quarterback off the edge at least once this game.
Yeah, it's funny how you bring up the Stallions' defensive line, because the guy they're going to be going up against is Zach Stacy, the Memphis running back. No more Sherman Beatty on the roster puts even more pressure on Stacy to produce, so I don't really know if I'd put him as a fantasy star this week. But with the Stallions boasting such a strong run game, the performance of Stacy will basically make or break the Express in my eyes.
Yeah, pretty much where Stacy's going to get his yards and points if you do have to start him in fantasy like I do this week. You're probably going to hope he gets a nice catch and run like he did last week, maybe a receiving touchdown in the end zone, because in terms of ground play, I highly doubt he gets much going because this Stallions run defense is just disgusting.
Yeah.
My next player to watch, it's Zach Mettenberger. The strength of the Stallions is their run defense, of course, and this will be a game where Mettenberger's half of the Zach attack is going to have to make an appearance. He hasn't yet thrown for over 200 yards, but to win this game, I'm going to say it, he's going to have to throw over 200 yards and at least throw 1 touchdown pass if they want any chance of pulling this one out.
I'd say that's a safe pick to make there.
Potential fantasy stars now for this game. Flipping the ball over to the Stallions passing attack. DeMontre Pearson-L. He had a fantastic week last week. He had 130 yards, I believe, a little over that, and his production is only trending upwards. He's the Stallions' clear number 1 receiver, so I'd feel safe starting him again against a secondary that is not that strong.
Yep. Another player that I would want to start would be Joel Buonio. With Brandon Oliver and Matt Asiata placed on IR, the Stallions' rushing game is solely on Joel's shoulders. Memphis has had one of the worst rush defenses in the league at the moment, which makes Joel a definite start in my book. And I feel like he could get at least a touchdown because he's not really a big yardage guy. So I feel like he could get around 50 yards and a touchdown if he's able to get the carries that he so deserves at this point.
Yep, and it makes sense. Both of our fantasy stars are from the team that I picked to win. So my prediction for this week is Stallions 23, Express 20. In typical Stallions fashion, I do think this game will be a very close one, but I think it is the game that they finally win and get over that hump they haven't been able to get over these past couple weeks. Their secondary doesn't face as much of a threat against Mettenberger as they have in the past, and I think they will finally edge this one out.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I've got the Express 14, Stallions 17. Both teams have fairly similar offenses, but they have quarterbacks that make their systems work without putting up huge numbers, and one big-name running back with Buonio and Stacy. So I'm looking at the defenses to break them. So both teams are near the bottom in pass defense, but Salt Lake carries the top rush defense in the alliance, and shutting down Stacy would win this game for them in my book. So I've got them up by 3 points.
All right, there you have it for game numero uno. We both have the Stallions taking this by a field goal. Next up, we have Arizona Hotshots at Orlando Apollos, which is Saturday, March 16th at 8 p.m. on NFL Network.
The big show.
Yeah, after the first 2 weeks, this was the game everyone was most excited to see, the two powerhouses going at it. But now, by the time Week 6 has rolled around, Arizona is on a 3-game skid, and the Apollos are actually the Hotshots here.
Yeah, I'm not embarrassed to say it. After that Week 1 game with Arizona, I was very excited to see this matchup. But ever since then, Arizona just hasn't been the same as that Week 1 team, which is starting to make me think this Week 1 game possibly was a fluke, and they just happened to execute perfectly. And now that we've almost seen Arizona's true colors, it's, in my book, not going to be nearly as exciting as I would have thought it would have been a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it's hard to give Arizona a shot here, but a key to give them a shot is going to be this first matchup I have, which is Rashad Ross versus Keith Reazer. This would normally be under the players to watch section, but for the Hotshots offense, it is just too important to leave there. Ross is by far their most important receiver and perhaps the best in the AAF, and Reazer is the best cornerback in the league right now. So if Wolford can't throw to Ross, I'm not sure what their passing attack will become, but I doubt it's going to be pretty. Unless a Marquise Bundy or Freddie Martino can blow up, if Ross doesn't win this matchup against Reazer, the Hotshots are in trouble on offense. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, but how about the wide receivers in this game? This will be fun to watch. The only two receivers in the Alliance with over 400 yards are playing in this game. Hotshots Rashad Ross and the Apollos Charles Johnson are going head-to-head. Although these players may not make or break the game, like a key to the game, but they will certainly shoot off some fireworks with their impressive play. So if they're not a key to the game, they're at least going to be fun to watch. And I'm sure that this will be a very great game to be at in stadium if you're an Orlando fan.
Yeah, for the Apollos here, they have another receiver who's fun to watch in Jalen Marshall, but the Hotshots just don't really have that yet, or at least they haven't gotten a chance to show what they're made of. Marquise Bundy and Freddie Martino, I just talked about them. You probably haven't heard their names very often because they actually haven't done much. Rashad Ross has pretty much carried the load of the entire passing game on his back week in and week out. So I am excited to watch Bundy and Martino get some more shots at making catches and touchdowns if Ross is covered by Reazer, but it will be interesting to see whose wide receiver core wins out this game.
Well, if we remember, Arizona had a number 2 receiver in Josh Huff.
And then he got put on IR.
Yeah, he then got injured, placed on IR, but he was putting up some solid number 2 numbers for a team. But of course, Jalen Marshall is a little bit better at this point because he's played more games, but even so, they had that and they lost it. So they got to overcome that and see what they can find now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if people are getting put on IR more often because this is only a 10-game season as opposed to 16. You might think that maybe these injuries are only a 5-week injury and they could have been back. But unfortunately, of course, we only got 10 games because we only have so long that we can play spring football.
Yeah.
So these guys are going on IR, and it's unfortunate, but teams are going to have to overcome it and show that how they play as a team is better than the other guys.
Do you feel like the IR could be kind of a side effect of only having a 1-game preseason?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good point. I think next year I'm hoping to see maybe fewer injuries just because these guys have played football again. Because some of these guys probably haven't played for a couple years. I know some of them are coming off of practice squads, but that's totally different than playing a full, fast-paced game. So it'll be nice to see. They might get longer to warm up and practice, and these guys also might work a little more in the offseason to prepare themselves to play because they know that their AAF chance is right around the corner.
Yep. Well, let's continue talking about Arizona. Arizona needs a hot start. In their last 4 games, the Hotshots have only scored 12 points in the first half, with 6 of those being a touchdown with a mere 21 seconds left in the second quarter. So trust me, that barely made the cut. Arizona also has not scored any points in the first quarter of a game since their Week 1 absolute show on NFL Network. And the Hotshots desperately need to build momentum early with a quick score against Orlando because the last game that they looked deadly, they scored in the first quarter, and Orlando will almost certainly score in the first, so they're already going to be working from behind if they can't do anything.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense, and Orlando is pretty much the opposite of that. They have been starting a little slower, but they still tend to score in that first quarter. Of course, they went down and tore the Birmingham Iron defense to shreds on their very first drive with a passing touchdown. So if Arizona is going to have any chance of keeping pace with that kind of offense, they're going to need to score fast and early.
Yep. While we were on the topic of Arizona, though, John Wolford, he needs to pull a Taylor Swift and shake it off. Wolford has definitely shown some shades of greatness this year, but he has also showed the complete opposite with a 3-interception performance last week. If Wolford can just relax as we told him to and shake off his rough pass performance, maybe we can see the Week 1 Wolford again. Wolford was asked about last week's performance by the Hotshots team reporter, and he simply said, "You're upset that you lost, but you learn from it and you move on." And this will be the game that he'll need to move on by because Orlando's going to be an absolute powerhouse to take down.
Derek, I gotta say, a T-shirt with John Wolford's face on it with the caption underneath "Shake It Off" would be an excellent thing to sell.
Well, we
if we
can
could make it,
submit that.
We could submit that to our store. Should we? If you're listening and want to tweet at us if we should have a John Wolford "Shake It Off" T-shirt, we will make it and we will sell it. I think it would be awesome.
Tweet at us if anybody wants that.
If anybody wants a John Wolford "Shake It Off" T-shirt, we could even put Taylor Swift hair on him. I think it'd look great.
That would look weird.
It'd look awesome.
And finally, this game can't be all on Arizona's shoulders. Orlando's not perfect. They're close to it, but they're not perfect.
Yeah.
So they got to correct some simple mistakes before they're perfect. Like last week, Orlando committed penalties that extended drives for Birmingham. Steve Spurrier said the team still has work to do on correcting as the season goes on. The Apollo's defense also dropped 3 potential interceptions, and catching those could have made the game a blowout instead of keeping the game close until the fourth quarter, as per the Apollo's team reporter. Wolford can get caught making questionable decisions, though, so capitalizing on those decisions could make or break the game for the Apollos, or maybe they just don't need those mistakes and they'll blow them out of the water offensively. One of the two.
If Orlando's punter can pin the Hotshots inside of that zone where Wolford has to play with the end zone right at his back, I would not be surprised if he throws another pick there. He's done it almost every week since week 1. He gets kind of nervous. He does. He gets nervous. He wants to get rid of the ball so he doesn't either end up in the end zone or lose some serious yardage. So make sure you catch those picks when he throws them to you in that opposing red zone, and you should be sitting pretty.
Yep.
Players to watch for this game. My first player here is Jarrell Worthy. I already talked about my normally go-to defensive player for the Apollos in Keith Rieser, but Worthy fills his place very nicely. Last game, he was an absolute game wrecker, giving Iron quarterback Keith Price no time to throw the ball at all. If the Hotshots can't stop the interior pass rush, John Wolford is in for a very, very long day.
Yeah, as you mentioned, John Wolford, he's another player to watch from me. I'm definitely not going to start him this week or even put him at my power player like I did last week. But Wolford's play is going to be a key part of this game, and watching him will be quite interesting to see if he falls further down this bad play rabbit hole, or if maybe, just maybe, Wolford could be the first one to figure out the Apollo's defense.
Well, another part that's going to have to figure out the Apollo's defense from the Hotshots is running back Jarrell Presley. Cook has been taking a majority of the carries, but Presley plays a larger role in that passing game. He needs to step up and make some big plays to help out the struggling offense. He's still one of the most efficient running backs in the AAF, averaging still over 4 yards per carry every time he gets to touch the ball. So maybe if they can implement his big play ability and his ability to find gaps and hit the holes into their offense, they might be able to edge this one out.
I feel like Jarrell Presley has been one of those running backs that's just gotten better every week. He hasn't really declined. Except for last week, actually. He didn't do that well. But up until that point, he had over 120 total yards the week prior, and he's been getting better. His carries
I think it's interesting that they decided to give the ball to Tim Cook more often, because I saw a lot of good things from Presley, and I wasn't sure why they started to phase him out of the offense. So I think that they should start to bring him back in. He had a good week 1, when they dominated. So if they can get him going again, I think good things could come for this Hotshots offense.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
But the offense that we do think is going to have the better day contains both of our potential fantasy stars. And for me, my potential fantasy star is Charles Johnson. He's a fantasy star every single week. This week is no different. The Hotshots let the Commanders' wide receiver 1, Mikhail McKay, gain 91 yards and a touchdown, particularly on a big catch for that touchdown. So look for Johnson to have some similar numbers there.
Yep, and while you talk about Charles Johnson, I got to talk about the guy throwing to him, Garrett Gilbert. So far, there's been 0 defenses that have been able to contain Gilbert in the Apollo's offense. So this Arizona defense just gave up 250 yards and 2 touchdowns to Logan Woodside, a guy that hasn't been impressive for the first 4 weeks of the season. So a player who has been struggling, and this doesn't appear to be the week that Garrett Gilbert will be slowed down, especially coming off of a defense with a bad game like that.
Yeah, Garrett Gilbert is not going to be slowed down, and that's why, for my prediction this week, I have the Apollos winning 31-17 over the Hotshots. It's the Apollos. They still play near-perfect football every week, besides those small mistakes you talked about, and unless the Hotshots pull off some sort of miracle, the Apollos are going to take this game.
Yeah, I just find it hard to disagree with you there.
Yeah.
I got the Apollos winning 28-17. This game is solely based on momentum in my eyes, and the Apollos are hotter than any team in the league by a landslide, with no teams really giving them a tough challenge. While the Hotshots are anything but hot as of late. Winning is a habit, and I don't see the Apollos breaking this habit this week or probably for a while.
Yep. All right, next game. We're moving on to Sunday now. We have San Antonio Commanders at the Atlanta Legends, Sunday, March 17th at 4 p.m. This game is on CBS Sports Network, which is unfortunate because I was excited to watch it, and I will probably not be able to.
Well, you can watch it online on the AAF website.
Oh, on the AAF Raw.
Yep. If we want to talk about momentum, though, this is the game to watch. I firmly believe this is the game to watch of the four.
See?
Both teams are coming in on 2 straight wins in impressive fashion. The Legend have been nothing short of incredible, with Zampese controlling the offense over 400 yards per game while he's there. And San Antonio's coming off handing Birmingham their first loss of the season and Logan Woodside's Offensive Player of the Week award last week. Both teams couldn't be hotter, and it's just going to be a clash of 2 great teams right now, and I can't wait to figure out how it falls.
Yes, sir. They'll be fighting fire with fire here.
While we talk about keys to the game, how about we keep the momentum rolling? I've definitely said this exact phrase before, but it holds true in games like this. Whichever team can keep their fire burning will start off hot and most likely win the game. If you don't believe me, just watch the first half of the Commanders game last week. Their fire from the Iron game led into an incredible 26-0 halftime lead. They obviously cooled off in the second quarter, though.
I was going to say they got to be careful about that.
You don't want that to transfer to this game. You want that first half. So we're going to have to wait and see how that works.
Yeah, part of that first half being so dominant was the Commanders' secondary, and they are my next key to the game here. The Commanders' secondary has been improving the past few weeks. They picked off Wolford 3 times, and that was a great step in the right direction. However, they still ended up allowing 2 passing touchdowns and nearly 250 yards, as well as giving up over 100 yards and a touchdown to Rashad Ross. They don't have to worry about a star receiver that much against the Commanders like they did against the Legends. That's what I meant. The Legends don't have that really star receiver like the Hotshots do, so they don't have to worry about that as much, but Murray does an excellent job of spreading the ball out. 8 players had a catch last week, and 6 with more than 20 yards, so they're going to have to, instead of covering one guy, they're going to have to cover the whole field all the time.
Yeah, with the Legends coming off of back-to-back 400-yard performances, the Commanders' entire defense has a major challenge on their hands. Murray has not been stopped this year, so unlike the sliding Hotshots, this team has some swagger, and they aren't looking to change their newfound style, especially against the Commanders' defense, which I believe is it still ranked the worst pass defense in the league?
I think so.
Yes, it is.
Because despite those picks, they did still give up nearly 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, yes, they can pick the ball off, and that really is what ended up saving them at the end of the game there. But you have to be able to still limit the yards and the touchdowns because those are still points that the other team is putting on the board. Mm-hmm. Now, the person responsible for the Legends putting most of their points on the board is Ken Zampese, and that man himself is a key to the game for me. Will the seeming savior of the Legends be able to craft another excellent game plan? Just like the fact that backup quarterbacks tend to do well because teams haven't gotten a chance to see them, it will be interesting to see if teams can start to figure out how Zampese works and find the holes in his offensive game plan. If they can't, and the Legends continue to dominate in terms of time of possession and stay above 50% on third down conversions, this offense is going to be hard to stop.
I don't know, though. With only 2 games of film on his offensive scheme, it will certainly be difficult to plan for him. And as the time goes along, not only are the defenses going to get more comfortable with Zampese, but Zampese is going to get more comfortable with the Legends, and I feel like he's just going to be able to be more creative as time goes by.
Yeah, plus as they get more film on him, he's watching film on all the opposing defenses as well, so it's pretty hard to keep up with an offensive coordinator in terms of adapting to his game plan, but it'll be interesting to see if the Commanders are maybe the first team to be able to figure out how to stop this guy. He's put a spark into the Legends that they just haven't had, and it'll be nice to see that on display again.
I
Both
personally
of these teams,
doubt this will be the game that they break Zampese.
particularly with that weaker secondary, giving up all those yards and stuff, Zampese is probably going to have a field day with Murray's arm. Both of these teams, for another key here, they have to remember that there are 4 quarters of football to play. This is pretty obvious key for the Commanders considering the comeback that they almost allowed against the Hotshots. In this league, you just can't be complacent, and when you get a lead, keep pouring the points on. The Apollos are great at this. Spurrier is always hungry for points, so I would recommend taking a page from the team with the undefeated record and never take your foot off the gas. Even when you're up 26-0, keep trying to score points because you never know what the other team's going to do in that second half of football.
Yeah.
For the Legends, don't let the legends of weeks past show up and only play the first quarter. They did an excellent job of wearing down the Express last week with their 76 plays. Also, they ran 74 plays against the Hotshots in their other win. So Zampese has not only had over 400 yards of offense, they're also running over 70 plays a game, which is just ridiculous for an offense.
That gives him more plays to get settled as well. So he's testing out a system. He can add things with that many plays, and I would say he's almost on par with the other offensive coordinators at this point.
Yeah, watching the Legends play football, it's like they're running a marathon, and it seems to be working for them. So keep it up against the team that almost blew a 26-point lead. They obviously can get worn down, particularly over the full length of the game. Keep it going, carbo load, run that marathon, and you should be able to pull this game out.
Carbo load. Wow.
Yeah, that's what you got to do. Players to watch this week for the Legends offense. Running back Taron Folston. He and Brandon Radcliffe each got 11 carries last week, but Folston was way more productive, gaining 83 yards and a touchdown, while Radcliffe only had 31 yards on those same 11 carries. He looks like he'll be carrying the rock a majority of the time and is an exciting player to watch, and he seems to be the Legends' RB1 right now.
Yeah, there's 2 players in the Legends that I'm looking out for too, but they're on defense and special teams. Tyson Graham Jr. is tied for the lead in tackles in the Alliance. He plays safety. I believe he had a pick last week too.
He did, yeah.
He's had a very good season so far, and I feel like he could only get better against Woodside, who did throw a pair of picks last week. And of course, Younghoe Koo. It just doesn't get better than him at kicker. And I'm pretty happy for him, and I hope he kind of keeps the momentum rolling.
Yeah, are he and Elliott Fry for the Apollos the only 2 who are perfect so far?
Yes, and I believe they're both 11 of 11.
Yeah, so it'll be nice to see maybe one of them breaks this week, but hopefully not, and these guys continue to ball out.
Well, actually, Nick Rose is 10 of 10 as well.
Oh, look at that. These kickers are actually not bad. I feel like some NFL teams, hint, hint, the Steelers should maybe be looking into some of these guys.
Absolutely.
But my other player to watch is Logan Woodside. He had his best game of the year against the former second overall pass defense in the league, and the hot streak will need to continue against the now top-ranked Legends. They now have the top-ranked pass defense in the AAF, so it'll be interesting to see if Woodside can continue to carry that fire over from last game and have another solid outing. He was 21 for 27 last week. If he can keep that completion percentage up, the Commanders should have a good shot here.
Yeah.
Potential fantasy stars for this week. My fantasy start, however, is not Woodside. It is the other quarterback, Aaron Murray. You might be worried about starting him considering the 3 picks that Wolford threw, but fear not. Without these picks, Wolford has an excellent game, and the way Murray has been playing, I can see him mirroring those numbers with fewer picks.
Yep. Another guy I'm looking at is one of the guys Aaron Murray likes to throw to. Atlanta wide receiver Shantavius Jones. Jones has 161 yards over his last 3 games, and he had 89 last week against Memphis. He's just been getting more and more targets, which tells me to start him against the worst pass defense in the Alliance. It's simply put that way. San Antonio has the worst pass defense. Atlanta's got the best. It just kind of gives a clear advantage to Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things Atlanta's not good at is rush defense. I'm starting Kenneth Farrow. Farrow had a bit of a slump last week, but the Legends' rush defense is one of the 3 in the Alliance that gives up over 100 yards against on average, making this a potential breakout game for Farrow, and I feel like he could be the one guy that carries the San Antonio offense.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, even if his yardage is down, if he ends up in the end zone at least once, so don't be afraid to start him. He is a key piece of the Commanders' offense, and they're going to want to get him going.
Absolutely.
Predictions for this game, however, I do have Atlanta edging out the Commanders, who we had ranked number 2 in our power rankings, but I think Atlanta is going to have more momentum going into this game. Atlanta's going to win it 25-22. Both these teams are hot, but I think the Legends are hotter. Murray should have an easier time throwing the ball, and as long as the Legends defense can step up as they have, they should be able to take this game, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's a game-winning kick from our favorite leg in the AAF.
I'm thinking the game will be a little bit of a wider margin, though. I also have Atlanta winning. I've got San Antonio 20, Atlanta 30. I really have started to like this Legends offense. And with the Commanders' pass defense still sitting at number 8 in the Alliance, I just don't see them being a team to slow down Murray. And because of that, I have Murray winning it in a pretty sizable fashion.
All right. And finally, wrapping up this week of football, we have the Birmingham Iron at the San Diego Fleet, Sunday, March 17th at 8 p.m., and this game is once again on NFL Network. Fun fact, the Fleet will be wearing new jerseys, so they already are winning in the freshness category for this game, so Birmingham will be playing from behind in terms of swagger. But it'll be fun to see what the Fleet have come up with for their new jerseys.
Yeah, they did a really fun poll on their website asking what color the new jerseys are, and the ending selection by the fans, 2,700 votes. 43% of the people chose navy blue over green, yellow, and white. So I feel like those could be really nice.
I think navy blue would be a really nice color for the Fleet. I don't want yellow because the Hotshots already have yellow. The Express already have a white jersey, but the Express also have a navy blue jersey. But I think for the Fleet, navy blue just makes so much sense. I think that would be an excellent look. So that'll be exciting to see. So make sure if you want to tune into a game, tune into this one to see those new jerseys, or tune into the last one we looked at to see probably one of the best games of the week.
Yeah.
But besides their jerseys, how is San Diego going to win this game? They're going to win this game through their running game if it can recover. After getting stifled last week, this is a great week for the normally solid Fleet backfield to get their feet back under them. The Iron really struggled to stop the run game of the Apollos last week. They gave up 119 yards to their lead running back, Smith. And with their pass defense still being the strength, the Fleet are going to want to pound the rock. So if that run game can recover, they should have a pretty nice game.
Yeah, that would be true. Orlando did run the ball a lot against them, though. Remember, it was pretty cold, and I think it was raining a little bit, and Orlando ran the ball 29 total times, but that doesn't excuse the performance. They still had 6.28 yards per rush that game. So the Iron defense has to step up, and I can't believe I'm saying that now after everything they have done so far this season.
I know. They gave up that 142-yard game to Kenneth Farrow, so it doesn't look like they're that hot right now.
No.
So this run game should have a chance to shine.
Absolutely.
But somebody else for the Fleet who's going to have to shine, the test of Mike Bercovici. That's what this game is going to be. A defense that thrives on turnovers and a quarterback that until last week loved to turn it over. They weren't able to fluster the mighty Garrett Gilbert, the Iron defense. But Bercovici is no Garrett Gilbert, and he's going to need to be careful against a secondary that I'm sure is searching for redemption after getting manhandled last week and not having picked the ball off in either of their last two games.
Yeah, as I said in our last episode, this is the game that will make or break Bercovici in my eyes. The Iron feast on QBs that throw questionable balls into coverage, and Bercovici is still in that category in my eyes. If he gets out of this game with one or fewer picks, I'll consider it a success, and I will continue to love on Bercovici for the rest of the year. But if he throws two or more, I think it's normal old Bercovici, and he's going downhill fast.
And the other quarterback, we have another quarterback test here, and that's the test of Keith Price. San Diego defense is one of the best in football and now has a little bit of film on Price. Granted, it's not much. It's literally less than a game, but it is still some film nonetheless. Unlike the Apollos, who have a great defense, but they had absolutely no idea what Price was going to be like. Price has shown that he can sling it and is very elusive in the pocket, but the San Diego pass rush should focus on containing him and test out that arm that was solid last week, but without a full game under his belt is still unproven. Also, the Iron wide receivers aren't that strong. Quentin Patton has not showed off the skills that some people thought he would be able to. Amba Etatau has been out But he should be coming back, not this week, but next week. He practiced for the first time yesterday in the past couple games. So maybe once that receiving core gets back together, they can have some better games here. But right now, I'm not sure what Price is going to be able to do.
Yeah, and you know this too. I'm also not very big on Keith Price. This game is just full of quarterbacks that I'm not too confident in, which is kind of weird to say. But San Diego, how about they have a very fierce defensive line to deal with a mobile quarterback like Price. They have 2 of the top 7 players in sacks so far this season. Demontre Moore has 4 sacks and Shakir Soto has 3.5. And they proved to scare offensive linemen, which have been shaky in the Fleet's past. So if Price is holding the ball too long again, he is going to know these 2 very well by the end of the game. And another thing is, we talked about the Iron defense kind of slumping last week against the Apollos, which rightfully so. They're a fantastic team. But my final key of the game is, can the Iron defense regain its form? Following last week's spanking at the hands of the Apollos, the Iron defense looked very average.
Yeah, that's true.
This is, of course, the complete opposite of their weeks 1 through 4 performances, where they gave up less than 12 points per game. But this will be the true test to see if the Iron can come back to form or if the Apollos expose them beyond repair.
Well, yeah, it's going to be a struggle here. Right now, it really is looking like the Apollos, Legends, and Fleet all have better defenses than the Iron after that last week. But you said you have to cut them a little bit of slack here. It's the Apollos, for crying out loud. Steve Spurrier is lethal on offense, and of course he has all these ridiculous weapons. So I'm hoping they can get back into form because I love watching good defensive football, but I hope that they haven't been manhandled too much last week. But a player that you talked about earlier who will be doing some manhandling of his own is Demontre Moore, the defensive end for the Fleet. He will be putting pressure on Price to get the ball out of his hands quickly, and if Price doesn't throw that ball fast, he's either going to be on the ground or scrambling out of the pocket. Hopefully for the Fleet, though, they don't even allow him to scramble and have that pocket contained, but Price looked pretty slippery last week, so I wouldn't be surprised if he gets out of some tough situations and runs for some first downs, but Demontre Moore is going to be a force coming after the quarterback.
Absolutely.
And for the Iron, I talked about him a little bit, their wide receiver, Quentin Patton. He's the wide receiver 1 for the Iron, but he's been pretty lackluster and needs to make some big plays to put a spark in a pretty stagnant passing offense. Their only passing touchdown has been to a running back. That needs to change. You have to get your wide receivers to catch a ball in the end zone. If they do, it should start a little tidal wave of wide receiver touchdowns, or at least that's what you hope. Keith Price can throw the ball down the field, so I'm hoping for the Iron's sake that either Quentin Patton or somebody else in that wide receiver core comes down with a ball in the end zone this week.
Yeah, you talked about Quentin Patton being a player to watch. I'm going to go out and start an Iron wide receiver. I like Wes Saxton Jr.
Ooh.
Saxton was used very minimally when Perez was playing for quarterback, so you probably don't know his name. But when Price came in,
I didn't.
Saxton became the team's deep threat and leading receiver, definitely putting him on my radar this week. He had no targets from Perez last week, but whenever Price came in, he had 4 targets, all over 10 yards, and possibly more. He ended that game with 75 yards, and his longest reception was 35. So he can put up big numbers, and I'm willing to start him against this San Diego secondary.
Hey, Derek, great research. I had no idea who that guy was until you just talked about him right now.
Huh.
So
Wes Saxton Jr., put him on your radar.
Wes Saxton Jr. For me, my potential fantasy star for this week is Fleet running back Terrell Watson. He did have a rough week last week, but of course it was against that excellent Stallions run defense. He has a great shot to bounce back this week. The Iron defense gave up 182 rushing yards last week. They gave up 142 to Kenneth Farrow. So if their pass defense does show up, they will be running the ball a lot, and that ball will be run through Terrell Watson.
Yep, as you talk about the Fleet, though, San Diego defense is an entire unit that I'm thinking about starting this week. Through the first couple of weeks, the Iron offense has not scored an impressive amount of points, never really scoring more than 20 or so. And add Price, who was sacked a season-high amount this past week, and I think there's some potential defensive points this week, whether that be 1 turnover, but a lot of sacks.
I like it. My prediction for this week, though, is going to ride off the back of that San Diego defense, and I have San Diego taking this game 20-17 over Birmingham. The Birmingham defense is good, but the Fleet defense has been on fire, and right now their offense looks better than the Irons, so I'm going to give the Fleet the edge this game.
This is going to be the first game we disagreed on in over a week now, because I'm going to go differently. I think Birmingham bounces back into form, and I think they win this game 17 to San Diego's 12. I don't really trust either of these teams' offenses to break out in this game, but I believe that Iron defense will come in with something to prove after last week, and I think they can have a fun day in San Diego, leading to victory for them, bouncing them back and giving a sizable lead in that number 2 seed, the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of the slower games of the week simply because of how the Iron play and how their defense plays and things like that. But I don't think that's going to make it any less exciting because I do see a defensive battle ensuing.
Yeah.
Fantasy football talk now to round out this, might I say, excellent episode. We'll start off with our plugs for the week. My plug is Aaron Murray. He has a great matchup. I think he's going to do excellent things. I talked about him in my potential fantasy stars section. So feel free, put him in at quarterback. I think he's going to put up some excellent numbers. Yeah. And then my second plug for the week is Joel Bonio, who I've finally figured out how to pronounce his last name after 6 weeks.
Very proud of you.
Yeah, thank you. Even in a lackluster rushing performance, he ended up with 2 touchdowns last week. They were short, but if you get your running back into the end zone in fantasy, that's all you can really ask for.
Yeah.
Oliver and Asiata are now on IR. He's getting most of the carries, and those red zone touches are most important.
Yeah, I have to agree with both of your plugs this week, but I'm going to go with a little bit of a different route. I'm going with 2 wide receivers to plug. Number 1 is from the guy you've never heard of to fantasy plug. I got Wes Saxton Jr. as a plug. With Price under center, the Iron, I see Saxton becoming a factor in this offense. When Price came in, Saxton became the team's deep threat and leading receiver, as I just said. That puts him on my radar this week, and I'm going to take it one step further than that, and I'm going to place him as a start of the week because I think that he could definitely break at least one play big. And another wide receiver I'm looking at is Stallions wide receiver Demontre Pearson-L. Pearson-L is one of my favorite receivers in the Alliance, and despite being number 4 in the Alliance in receiving yards, he doesn't get the love that I feel he deserves.
I agree. He deserves more.
Memphis gives up, on average, 230 yards through the air and a little over 1 touchdown a game, so if you don't think the majority of that will go to Pearson-L, you're not looking at the AAF the right way.
We could also make T-shirts that say "We love Demontre." I think that'd be really nice. I think he'd like that.
I feel like you could make something better with his name.
Probably. So a player that I'm not going to make a T-shirt for this week is Zach Stacy. He is my pass. It's the same logic as last week when I said to pass on any Fleet running back. Right now, anyone running against the Stallions defense, you're going to want to pass on. If Zach Stacy does have a good game, it's going to be through the air, but I just don't really see that happening, and he's probably going to get stuffed. So I would be very cautious with him, and I'm going to pass.
Yep, another player that I would like to pass on is my fantasy quarterback, Logan Woodside. The Legends do have the best pass defense in the league, and they give up on average only 170 yards through the air. And this really makes me want to shy away from Woodside, who did have a couple of turnovers last week to go with his impressive day. So I'm just saying pass on him this week, maybe save him for another day.
A quarterback I am not passing on, however, and is my power player for the week, is Garrett Gilbert. This is the first time I've chosen him. You could pretty much choose him, just like Rashad Ross, as a power player literally every week. But this is the first week I'm going to go with him. Woodside had a great game against the Hotshots last week, and Garrett Gilbert is Garrett Gilbert, so start him.
Yeah, I feel like kind of Gilbert's a cop-out, personally.
Yeah.
He's so good.
Okay, he is very good, but I had to give it to him once. So this is my one cop-out week where I used Garrett Gilbert as my power player.
All right, I've done it before. I did it earlier in the year, though, before we knew how good he would be.
All right.
So that's my excuse.
Fine, I won't say him again. He is my cop-out for this week.
All right. My power player isn't as much of a cop-out. I'm going to do a little bit of I'm going to make a questionable decision here. I'm choosing Kenneth Farrow as my power player. Farrow's playing just the 6th best rushing defense in the league this week in Atlanta. and it's making him a very possible breakout candidate for me because if your quarterback's not having a good day, I think that Farrell could get a pretty good bulk of carries and thus making him blow up in my opinion. So I've got Kenneth Farrell as my power player, but as you know, my power players don't always turn out very well. So best of luck to Kenneth this week.
I wouldn't be that worried, though. He's shown he can run the ball. He had 142 yards, by far the most in one game by any running back this year. So it's not a bad call, Derek. Be confident in your choices here. I'm particularly confident in my Garrett Gilbert cop-out.
I feel like you should be.
I think it's safe. Well, that's all we have for this episode. Thank you so much for listening once again. Thank you for the support. Don't forget to review us and, of course, like, subscribe, and follow us on Twitter at AAF Analyzed. After this excellent week of AAF football, we'll, of course, be back here on Monday for our recap episode. Thank you so much. Peace out, and play football.
Thank you for listening to the AAF Analyzed podcast. Follow the show on Twitter at AAF Analyzed and feel free to contact the show to have your questions featured on a future episode. And don't forget to check out the show on all other platforms such as iTunes, Overcast, SoundCloud, and YouTube.